I think everybody knows what they're here for. We're going to do a treasure and gaming boot camp. We're going to cover an awful lot of material in a very, very short period of time. And we have some fabulous individuals here to present with me. So I'm Jillian Burnett. I am the treasurer for the BCC PAC. I formerly worked for MNP and I'm currently doing bookkeeping out in industry now. So I have some qualifications in this area and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll be here all weekend. Our session is being recorded, so if you could all save your questions until all of the presenters are finished, that would be great. I'm just going to take a moment to introduce everybody. We will be starting with Karen Hansen, who is a compliance gambling auditor with the gaming branch. And we also have Philip Montgomery. He is a special constable investigator with the enforcement division. And Matt Dell, manager of policy and outreach for community gaming. And of course, myself. Thanks.
First, I wanted to thank Jillian for giving us the opportunity to present to you. We wanted to get out a preventative message because within our region, there's 393 PACs, and a small group of these have suffered theft of their assets. And it was quite devastating for them. And so we just felt we needed to get out a preventative message to the rest of you so you can be on guard or aware of the potential risk. Tanya Sciano is also here with us. She's a compliance gambling auditor in the Lower Mainland, and she's got experience with PAC issues as well. So if any of you need materials for, gaming account summary reports or gaming event revenue reports or any questions that you have, we've got some sheets there that you can just put your name and email address on and request the information, and we'll get it sent out to you. So today, what we're going to cover is what creates the opportunity for fraud, some of the common themes that we've noted, some red flags or signals to be watching for, and then Philip's going to advise if you are an unfortunate victim what the process is. Most importantly, we're hoping to give you the message of how to avoid fraud from happening. I'm a certified fraud examiner, and I've assisted in some criminal proceedings with fraud schemes. Okay, so what constitutes fraud? Basically, fraud is an intentional or deliberate act to deprive another person of property or money by guile, deception, or other unfair means. And who commits fraud? Fraudsters are really hard to spot because they generally look like the hero of your organization. They're seen as a dedicated, hardworking individual. And they usually are the one that's praised for stepping up all the time and helping out. So there's a school of thought that 20% of the people have a moral high, that they would never be tempted. And then there's another 20% of the population that are inherently dishonest, so they're constantly looking for ways to cheat the system. And the rest of the 60% falls somewhere between those two extremes. And given the right opportunities, white-collar criminals generally tend to emerge from this group if the setting is just right to cause them to step over the line. Fraud triangle theory is one of the ways of trying to explain what causes the opportunities or the motive for fraud to happen in the first place. So the opportunity is a person who's placed in trust. They have minimal oversight and they've got access to all of the processes. In an atmosphere of trust, which I know is prevalent within a lot of nonprofit groups and volunteers, but that can tend to break down effective financial controls. Perceived pressure can be anything. Like it could be just, you're short for one pay period, or you need to buy something extra special for your kid for school. Just anything that can trigger a financial need. And then rationalization. The most common rationalization is, I'll just borrow this money and I'll put it back. And then when that doesn't happen, the rationalization can move forward to, well, I deserve this because I'm the one doing all the work. So what types of frauds occur? These are the three very general types, but within nonprofits, within PACs themselves, generally tends to be the asset misappropriation, theft of cash on hand, theft of cash receipts, and the fraudulent disbursement. And then that's typically followed up by inaccurate or vague financial reports, if there are any reports at all. Some indicators that fraud may be occurring. This isn't an exhaustive list, but this tends to be the most common ones that occur. And how to reduce the risk of fraud? Actually, Jillian is going to be speaking on this, ways to implement adequate segregation of duties and recording and that sort of thing. So we'll leave that one for Jillian to speak on. And then in summary, the perception of oversight tends to eliminate the opportunity that we were talking about in that triangle. If someone thinks, oh, if I borrow this money, they're going to know about it right off the bat, they're way less likely to make that first step. And that's truly where you want to get to, is to make sure that there are other people involved with the financial transactions. And truly, that's all I have, and I'll let Philip speak to you about if it does occur.
Morning, everyone. As Gillian said at the start, I'm an investigator with GPED. My name's Philip Montgomery, and I have worked with Karen on a number of theft and fraud files from PACs, which are devastating to the PACs, and I think it's really important that we take every opportunity to get out and just tell you what we've learned and, you know, some common themes. And if we can prevent even one of these things, then I think it's a good job. So my colleagues like Tanya and Karen will be conducting these regular reviews of your organisations, and what will come out of that typically is some findings that they'll give you, some little pointers that'll just nudge you back to centre and help you just really avoid these problems before they even start. So, I mean, while it might feel sometimes like you're being criticised, always take that as positive, constructive feedback. That's your goal, that's your nuggets to help you. And then very occasionally, sometimes the auditor can find that they suspect criminality, and that's where I come in. Because an investigator, generally they have law enforcement background. I had 13 years with the police service in Northern Ireland, which is why I talk funny. And that kind of shifts things, because we stand on the line between administrative law and criminal law, and there are complications there, and we need to make sure that we don't jeopardise any future criminal investigation. So important the investigators are aware of that as well. But I do actually like to stop at this point and just say that if anybody is feeling like any anxiety about this whole theft from PACs thing, is just don't panic. There are loads and loads and loads of PACs in BC that are being run by, you know, happy, community-minded, positive volunteers, and nothing goes wrong. And even if there is a suspicion of criminality, in the vast majority of these cases, it's just a mistake. It's an admin error, or it's an ineligible transfer. And an eligible transfer is not a crime. It's a mistake. We get that. And I don't want you to be overly nervous whenever we're talking about these thefts. It's a tiny, tiny percentage of all the successful PACs that are being run in the province. So some of the common themes that we've noticed is, I heard about this kind of thing, but we thought we would be okay. No. There's nothing notable or special about the PACs that fell victim. They're full of good, honest mums and dads trying to do their best, volunteer for their kids in their community. They were just unlucky more than anything else. And sometimes they were non-compliant, sometimes they weren't, sometimes you just can't avoid it. It happens. How could any parent steal from their own children? I don't know, but they do. And it starts small and it gathers time. It's like Karen said, you know, it could be just a little bit of money that you take and you intend every good intention to pay it back, and you don't. Nobody notices, nobody challenges you. So yeah, they maybe intend to pay that money back. They've got good intentions, and then nobody notices, nobody challenges them. They take a little bit more, and it just gathers momentum. It gets more brazen, it gets more blatant as you go along. And you get to a point where it's just, you can't avoid it anymore. It's huge amounts of money, thousands of dollars, and the PAC's devastated. Which brings me to nearly the most important point, which is this one. If something just doesn't look right, get in and challenge it. And I know that's an uncomfortable conversation. Of course it is. You don't want to, everybody's volunteer, these are friends. When somebody puts their hand up to be a treasurer, everybody else goes, happy days, I'm out. But if you see something that you think is wrong, then that person will probably welcome your support in getting it out in the open and getting it sorted. Because if it is wrong, I can tell you, months, years down the line, we have parents who have other parents who they suspect of theft. Their kids are still going to the same school. They might be going to the police and giving evidence against them, preparing to take them to court, potentially taking them to civil court, maybe walking past their driveway and seeing a nice car or a nice boat in that driveway every day while they walk their kids to school. That's uncomfortable. That's horrific. That's what you want to avoid. Get in early, challenge it. If you don't want to talk to the person directly, talk to the other board members, get it out there, and if you want to, talk to us. We'll get a review started and we'll poke through the coals and see what's going on. Okay? Don't ignore it. And can we get the stolen money back? Short answer is maybe. If the money's gone, if they spent it on an all expenses family paid trip to South Africa, that money's gone. No court is going to order that family to sell their house to pay you back. You may, as an organisation, decide that you want to take them to civil court. That's more time, that's more money, and chances are if you do get paid back, it'll be in instalments, which just draws the whole process out any longer. So headline is, get it early, shut it down. So what if this happens to us? You might meet one of my team, and the bad news is you'll only get to meet us when it's all gone wrong. And the good news is we're here to help. You get red stopped, which means if community gaming grants aren't already aware, we'll let them know, and you'll be ineligible for another grant until everything is sorted out. And you must report it to the police and have them open a file. I don't speak for the police, but they'll open a file and they'll investigate it on your behalf, and we will support them because, as he said before, we need to make sure that we don't get involved and cause a ruckus with it and cause problems for a future criminal file. We can support the police, we can work for the police, and we can, in certain circumstances, produce an evidential package for them. But really, we just need to make sure that we're only doing what they allow us to do, is the short answer to that. And our main goal is to oversee the process to get you back as an organisation to grant eligibility. So the GPEB investigation kind of runs separate and parallel to the police investigation, and will typically end a lot sooner than the police investigation. And we will ask you for documents, supply them to us as quickly as you can, and we'll work through those. And make recommendations, and if you comply with those recommendations, then we'll get you nudged back to centre and get you eligible for your next grant. Okay? And that's really all I wanted to go, kind of whip through that there. Limit the opportunity for the fraud to occur, remain vigilant, challenge anything suspicious, respond positively to our advice, and respond efficiently to our requests, and everything will go swimmingly. Thank you very much.
So that was a wonderful information that we learned. Always hard to hear that things can go wrong, but we know from experience that there are some best practices that we can put into place that will prevent any fraud from occurring. What you need to know what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. I am going to quickly cover off applying for direct access grants and fundraising with gaming, and then I'm going to go through some really best practices. The preparing of a budget, record keeping, reconciliations, and most importantly, how do you report out to memberships, okay? What needs to be done and when? Each year there are several items that your PAC is going to have to be on top of, or your DPAC, and having a calendar that lists what needs to be done also makes those transitions really easy. So as you have old executive moving out, you hand them the list, now they're all prepared for the next year. Things like BCC PAC membership applications in September, applying for your gaming grants in April. Don't forget to file your gaming account summary, which has to be done within, I think it's 90 days of your year end. And then also having a detailed outline for a budget process, when that's going to start, what sort of things you are looking at. And I'm going to go into the budget process very in depth, so we'll get to that when we get there. Applying for the direct access grants, applications are accepted between April 1st and June 30th. I think I'm going to leave the rest of this for Matt. Fundraising with gaming. Most gaming in BC requires a license. Now, the type of license that you're going to require depends on the value of your prizes, the price of your tickets, how much money you plan to raise. There's all sorts of different criteria. There are 4 different classes. Class A, B, C, and D, and you want to make sure that you are applying for this well in advance of your event. And then visit the website to learn everything you need to know, because it's fabulous. The other thing that I would say is I have on several occasions had to contact my gaming branch for further information. The people there are wonderful. They are happy to walk you through this process, okay? Do I need a budget? Yes, you need a budget. What is the purpose of spending all that time preparing a budget? The opportunity to reach consensus on the purpose and priorities of your organization. What is it that you want to do this year? What is it you're trying to do? It saves time in the long run. You don't have to have that PAC meeting to get approval to make that particular purchase. You've already done that in advance. You've decided that these are the things that are important to you and how you intend to go about doing it. What is a budget? This is something that is some people have some different ideas about what a budget is. It's not, I can't go over this amount, I can't spend more than this. This is essentially an estimate of the anticipated revenues and expenses that you're going to have for the year. It is your best estimate. It's a guess. always have the hard numbers. A budget can and should be reviewed. So if you find that you are going to go well over in your fundraising, how do you intend to spend that money? That's something that you want to talk about again. Or let's say we're not going to be able to hold that particular fundraiser for whatever reason, something's gone awry. What do we need to do? Where do we need to cut back? Preparing a budget. You want to determine your spending priorities. You want to determine your expenses. Estimate and plan your revenue. I know that's always a difficult one for a lot of PACs, but build consensus on that with everyone so that everybody is on the same page. You pass a budget via motion at a PAC or a DPAC meeting. And then my big message to everybody here is if you are raising money, what are you raising it for? Be really clear. We're not organizations that just raise money because it's the right thing to do. That's not what a PAC is about. We have a lot of other responsibilities and opportunities within the school. So just make sure that you have a purpose. And if you haven't spent all of your money, it's good to have a plan as to what you intend to do with that in the future, okay? Record keeping. Record keeping is essential. And there are a couple of different ways to do this. You can use an electronic software to do your record keeping, or you may decide that you want to do manual. What is the best way? I'm not going to advocate for either. There are pros and cons to both, and it really depends on your organization and how comfortable your treasurer is with using whatever you decide to use. Just be sure that you have some consensus on what is being done and how that's going to take place. These are the important steps. So you want to make sure that for every check that is written, that you have an invoice or a receipt. This is your supporting documentation for what you are doing. You want to make sure that they're approved and anticipated in the budget. Sometimes you may have an opportunity that comes up halfway through the year that is not in your budget. It's no problem to go to your PAC and say, you know what, this is a fabulous opportunity. I want to take advantage of it. What do you think? Put it out, put it to motion. The organization, the members can decide whether or not that's a good idea. Make sure all checks have 2 signatures. I hear stories all the time. Oh, I just pre-signed the checks for the treasurer. This is a really bad practice. Don't do it. Why do we have cash handling procedures in place? I hear all the time, it's like, don't you trust me? It's not a matter of trust. As I said, I have a background in accounting and I don't want the liability. I actually want, as the treasurer, to have these cash handling procedures in place. They protect me as much as the organization. And I think that's the message that I'd like you to take away, is we put them into place to prevent fraud, to create a situation where the opportunity doesn't exist. Good practice is to always make sure that the money received is properly counted by at least 2 people. You want to make sure that all documentation is stored in an organized manner. You want to keep complete and neat files. Reconciliations. A reconciliation is the process of just verifying that all the information that you have is correct and in some cases supported. It's good practice to have someone verify that a reconciliation is being completed monthly. You saw in the gaming slide that having the bank statement sent to somebody who does not have signing authority is a really good idea. Another way of doing this is to make sure that whoever does the bank statement reconciliation then gets sign off from somebody else on your executive without signing authority. It just makes sure that those checks and balances are in place so that somebody is looking at what is happening in your organization. One of the best practices that I've come across is in your bylaws and constitutions, create a third-party review team at year end so that you have non-signing authority individuals just review your books. We're not looking to identify bad practices or anything, but you can make recommendations for improvement. It's not to belittle the work that has been done by your treasurer. It's to say, you know what, that happened, that's fine. We've taken care of that. Let's ensure that we put practices in place to ensure that it doesn't happen going forward. That's what that's all about. Reporting to members. Reconciled bank statement at each meeting is a good idea. Your year-to-date versus budget for the year. Some people like to have this done at each and every meeting. It is easier to do if you're on an electronic system. If you're on a manual system, sometimes there's a lot of work involved to create that report, so you may want to only do it quarterly. It's also a good idea to have at your annual general meeting a final financial statements. How did we do? Did we meet our priorities? What would we like to see changed in the future years? You also have your ending cash balances and any highlights from the year. You can go over the budget process for the year as well. This is the most important thing. You want to make it relevant to the people that are in the room, understandable, and timely. Thanks.